Conference, for me, this last week has been defined by the deaths of 3 people. David Black, Channing Day and Catherine Kelly. Each died too early and each were taken in a moment. Attending the funerals of Police Officer Black and Corporal Day, it said to me how I have changed and how things have changed. I hope that the families find some measure of peace in how so many people of this place gathered around them, and gathered around them like we never ever did before. Conference, like you, I've been to many party conferences. This, I think, is my 30th. But it's not as many as our General Secretary, Jerry Cosgrove, 40 years this year, an employee of this party. Conference, when we come to valuing our own, Jerry is among the first we should be seen to value. Conference, we're not as big as we once were, but the strength of our values is the greatest strength of this party. That makes us very big indeed. The orthodoxy of the police process over the last decade or more has been, and this has prevailed in governance, has been to bring the DUP and Sinn Féin together, embed stability, devolution and united stand against terror, and do not scare the DUP and Sinn Féin horses. The consolidation of the positive achievements over the last 20 years is crucial, but we have to move beyond that orthodoxy. The ambition and values of the Good Friday Agreement Conference are greater than even the achievements to date. And all of us, including the Irish government, have to reach out and live up to those values. I just want to give you 2 examples. It is 6 years since St Andrews. It is 5 years since the commencement of the North-South review as part of St Andrews. It is 6 months, Conference, since the NSMC agreed that in November we would bring forward decisions on that review. And last week in November we learned that officials are to work to bring forward proposals by Christmas. So 6 years into a review and 6 months after decisions were said to be taken and 4 years into recession, we still have no outcome. Secondly, in this hall last night, Conference, the Pat Finucane Centre laid out how 3 guns had committed many murders, including murders of members of our party, and how those families deserve truth. And if the ambition and the values of the agreement are to mean anything, it means that the Pat Finucane's call and the call for truth of all families must be answered. Addressing the past will not be achieved by London reducing its role to refusing the Finucane family their inquiry. And addressing the past will not be addressed by Republicans offering new words of regret without any intention of telling the truth. So I say to all of us, and I say to the Dublin government, that I'm not impressed by a former Irish government minister who didn't move on those issues in the 4 years when he was a minister, criticising the current Irish government for not moving on those issues in less than the last 2 years. But the wider issue, the wider challenge, is that we need to move on those issues. Conference, history tells us that when the Irish government with others, and most times with us, takes a lead, people gather, listen, respond, and things change. Of course, political management is different now than before Restoration, but the values and the ambitions of the Good Friday Agreement are not. On North-South, on the past, and on other issues, the more we lead, the more we shape, and the more we can live up to the ambition and values of the agreement. As Alistair MacDonald will outline this afternoon, we are in a pivotal moment. The current phase of politics is ending. A new phase is emerging. All of us, including the Irish government, have to live up to the ambitions and values of the agreement in order to fully shape the phase that is emerging. Conference, in this hall, there are people who over many years said and did the right thing on parades. In previous times, it was Breege and Dolores Kelly. This summer, it was Alban and Nicola and the party membership in North Belfast. We are not part of the DUP Orange Sinn Féin attempts to do down the Parades Commission. It's not us who called it defunct, a beaten docket and cheerleaders for sectarianism. That was Jerry Kelly, John O'Dowd and Sinn Féin. And yes, when the Parades Commission is wrong, we tell them so, as we did this very day in respect to the termination in North Belfast. But we've always said, accept its authority, because in the absence of accepting the authority of the Parades Commission, there is a free-for-all. This summer conference, after the difficulties of August and September, Alban and Nicola and Breege and Dolores were vindicated, when others, after years of refusing to acknowledge that the authority the Parades Commission had to prevail, began to recognise that it had to prevail. As I said earlier, conference, a Parades Commission is part of the solution. It is not the problem. It is the safety net that steps in the absence that sustained, genuine and direct dialogue can bring. As I also said earlier, we are on the eve of the 6th review of parading and the Parades Commission in 20 years. Let it be clearly understood by all that we will continue to argue for a Parades Commission. We will continue to welcome dialogue. We will continue to applaud the bold leadership shown by some in the community over the summer. We say to Sinn Féin, do not be accomplices in the rundown of the achievements of the Commission over the last 20 years. We say to the Commission, you have work to do to deepen confidence in how you conduct your affairs. And we say to the two governments, stand and seem to be standing with the Parades Commission as we move forward. Conference, the issue around the Parades Commission is representative of a wider issue. Conflict in our society revolved around issues of law, order and justice. A big part of Seamus Mallon's life's work and a big part of his legacy is what he achieved on policing, justice and legal issues. Just as a big part of the SDLP legacy is what we achieved in terms of housing and councils, equality and rights. The two governments helped bring this new order into place. The two governments need to help to ensure it stays in place. Yes, the role and authority of the governments is different than it was, but they still have a role and authority, and they need to exercise it and be seen to exercise it, because it was those advances over the last 20 years that is the bedrock of stability and devolution. Conference, I want to say a few words about the DOE. The purpose of the Department of the Environment is to be a leading economic ministry as well as the leading environment ministry. A few hundred yards from this hall, I was introducing an important person a number of months ago. And I ended my words of introduction by asking this question. Did that person agree with me that the scale and wonder and beauty of our natural-built, archaeological and Christian heritage was unsurpassed in this island compared to any other parts of these islands? Coming from the democratic nationalist tradition, I don't know what form is when it comes to introducing a member of the British royal family. But Prince Charles stepped forward, and to be fair to him, he said that he did agree that the scale and wonder of our built and natural heritage in this part of the world was unsurpassed on these islands. So we work, conference, to protect our heritage, being a big part of the character of our lives, but we also work to positively develop it because it's a big part of tourism and jobs going forward. But in doing so, conference, we have to make difficult choices and take decisive action. The decision up at Runcorry at Bushmills was much less about a golf course and much more about tourist infrastructure in what some would argue, but not Margaret Ritchie, that some would argue is the area of greatest natural and built heritage that we have in the north of Ireland. National parks, in which they got into some hot water, is not a means, one iota, to restrict our biggest industry, farming. It is a means to say to people across the globe, in an internationally recognised language, our heritage is world-leading, come and see. If we do not take forward the built and natural heritage, we do not take forward job opportunities at a time when 64,000 are out of work and soon 84,000 will be out of work on the far side of welfare migration. Conference, the DUP came late, very late, to inclusive politics and equality. They've travelled some way down that road. Devolution, stability and a united stand against terror are the hallmarks, and we are all the better for that. But I say to the DUP, there is a much longer road to travel. I say to the DUP, travel it, don't go down dead ends. At present, there are strong elements within the DUP who are seeking to recover ground they believe they lost in the past. However, how else can we conclude when they say no to a praise commission, no to a Northern Ireland housing executive, no to a place for the gathering in Northern Ireland, no to an Irish Language Act, no to New North-South, and no to a nationalist justice minister? Peter Robinson spoke a few weeks ago and said the following: without the solid foundation built by DUP resolve to say no, the platform for real progress would not have been possible. I say, by continuing to say no, the platform for even more and even greater progress is not possible. In the same speech, Peter Robinson goes on and asserts that the SDLP stance on welfare, pensions and parades, which Sinn Féin, he says, lacks the courage to oppose, is bad for community relations and bad for government. Well, let me tell Peter Robinson, the leadership and diligent work of Mark H. Durkin on welfare is good for government and good for community relations. And our positions on parades and pensions is good government and good for community relations. According to Peter Robinson's logic and politics, our stance on more North-South, on the housing executive and on the gathering is also bad for community relations and bad for government. Is this the height of Peter Robinson's understanding of partnership politics? Or is this what he has learned that he can get away with sitting across the table from Martin McGuinness? So Peter, SDLP are not getting into line. We will stay on the right line of issues that impact on the lives of our people and the shape of the island. Let the DUP carry on down the right road. Let's deepen partnership, but on the right terms. Let the ambition and values of the Good Friday Agreement prevail. And let's not any longer cling to a past that is already dying. So what do I have to say, conference, about Sinn Féin? They have fallen into line with the DUP. They rage against London austerity, but buckle when the chance arises to derail it. They tell people one day to give information, not in one of their own the next. They like government, but don't know much about being in power. And they see the current dispute between themselves and the DUP settling itself by a renewed rush by First Minister and Deputy First Minister to the sound of clicking cameras. Their problem, Conference, is that people don't want to fall into line with the DUP, don't want parties to buckle, want all crime to be reported to the police, want ministers in power as well as government, and want more than the sound of the clicking camera. The more the SDLP reaches for the values and ambition of the agreement, the more we shape politics boldly and decisively, the more Sinn Féin will be seen not to do so. Because ultimately, unlike us, they don't believe heart and soul, unambiguously, all the time, in all ways, in those values and in that ambition. Two final points, Conference. In my home, we have an O issue. That's not a reference to my wife, Orla. And while Orla might say it could be, it's not a reference to me being out all the time. The O issue is opposition. Belfast Telegraph reported in recent days that I was the first to outline the case for the party to leave government, and that after the 2011 elections, I had suggested to my colleagues that rather than contemplating what minister it should take in government, the party should interrogate whether it should be there at all. That's broadly true, and that's broadly still my position. I do believe that in this phase of politics, in the current time frame, we have to definitively decide the issue of opposition in principle and the issue of opposition in practice. That is not in any shape or form to deny the integrity or the structures of the Good Friday Agreement. It is to add a further dimension to them if a party should choose to go there. Conference, in my view, I am the most privileged politician in the SDLP. I've been elected on a number of occasions for West Belfast. With Joe Byrne and Eddie McGrady and all those who were involved in the DPPs, we were given the responsibility to shape the new beginning to policing by John Hume, Seamus Smallin, and by the party. That is the single biggest piece of enduring work that Joe, Eddie and I will ever achieve. And I have been also privileged on 2 occasions to be given the responsibility to go into government. I consider myself to be the luckiest politician in the SDLP. I consider myself to be in the best party on the island of Ireland.
Morning, Conference. I just want to welcome the US Consul General, Gregory Burton, who's in the room this morning with us.